Welcome to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
My darlings, I bring you another Skinwalker story from Raldo GTM. I hope you enjoy. Ceremonial Visitor. I'm sharing an event that happened back in the early 1990s. It was a story that a close friend and I experienced. I've changed their names to keep their identities hidden. I grew up in a reservation border town. For those who don't know what that is, it's a town that is adjacent to the reservation. These towns are frequently visited by natives who live in close proximity to town. Like most reservation border towns, the relationship between natives and non-natives can be intense. Our neighborhood was mixed racial, and we all looked out for one another. I had a longtime friend that I grew up with, Leland, and his older sister, Tina. Their mother was Navajo, and through the Navajo clan system, she was my aunt. Their father was Mexican. He worked in the local oil field industry, as did my father. Leland and I were best friends. We had sleepovers, and we both attended each other's family events. We were like brothers, and Tina was also like a big sister, too. Leland and I attended the same high school. We were both sophomores, and Tina was a senior at the same high school. Tina was popular and had a huge social network at school. Leland and I were just a couple of nobodies. Guys used to come over and try and ask her out, even at their house. Life was good in the neighborhood. That was about to change. Prom was nearing, and Leland and I had no intention of going. Tina, on the other hand, had several guys asking her to the prom. I remember catching a few conversations from Tina and her mother about who she was going to prom with. I overheard Tina saying there was a native guy that asked her to prom, and that she had declined his offer. She said that he had gotten upset and started to insult her over her racial bigotry, and that she only dated white guys. I didn't see that particular altercation, but I did overhear their conversation. I think this was about the time when things started to change. Leland and Tina's family started to experience a series of bad luck. At first, it seemed like they were just inconveniences, but it soon snowballed to more and more events. Their family started to have vehicle breakdowns, and arguments with others seemed to escalate. I remember that their father was laid off, and the mother had to look for work to help pay the bills. She'd gotten a job as a night janitor and would come home in the early morning hours. At first, their father would make rude comments about her coming home late and that she was having an affair. Things at that house were becoming more and more heated, and I didn't want to go visit Leland anymore. I would ask for him to come over to our house instead of visiting at his house. Leland would often ask to stay at our house because he didn't want to listen to his parents fighting, and his sister would just lock herself in her room. One morning, when Leland's mom was coming home, she'd seen a shadowy figure outside Tina's window. She thought that it was a guy trying to sneak into the house. She got out of the car and ran over to the side of the house where Tina's window was located and saw nothing. She looked around the house and didn't see anyone hiding, but her husband had heard the noises. He automatically accused her of being up to no good and sneaking around the house. A huge argument ensued, and I vaguely remember that night. That's when my parents were up and looking out the window. I remember them talking about the commotion down the street, and lights from the police cars lit up the neighborhood. I asked what was going on, and they told me to go back to bed. It was in the morning when I found out that Leland's father had died. Leland's father had taken his own life that night, and I remember feeling so bad for them. Things weren't the same. When I went over to Leland's house, it felt like a huge weight was on my chest. The air was heavy and thick. I felt very uncomfortable in their home. I thought it was the weight of sadness for their loss. I just couldn't explain how awful I felt in their home. The night of the prom came and went. Tina didn't go. She had become more and more withdrawn, and her school life had become non-existent. She refused to attend school and refused to see her friends. Even her closest friends were pushed away. Tina didn't look the same anymore. She used to be full of life, and now she was a shadow of what she used to be. I remember that one evening, Leland had a visit from his uncle. His uncle was checking up on the family, and he was concerned about what was going on. He had mentioned that the house felt sick and that it needed to be blessed. Traditional ceremonies and rituals were new to Leland and his family. They were devout Catholics and did attend Catholic Mass once in a while. I remember Leland's uncle Kenny had told them that they had walked away from their native heritage and that they are no longer in harmony. He had suggested to seek help from a medicine man and that he would need to cleanse the house, especially since someone had died in the house. I was able to go with Leland, his mother, and uncle to go talk to the medicine man. Kenny had lots to say about how we had all walked away from our native heritage and adopted the Western culture. I had asked him about the medicine man and how much he charged for his help. What he told me has stuck with me to this very day. Kenny said that if you had to pay a medicine man for his services, he isn't a medicine man. He is a fraud and only wants your money for his benefits. He said that real medicine man doesn't charge for his services. He is a servant for the community, and the community should give what they can to help him. In the back of the van is seen a case of bottled water, a can of coffee, a sack of potatoes, and a bag of tobacco. I asked Kenny if these items were payment for the medicine man's services, and Kenny replied that it was a small payment to get us started to the path of harmony. The trip to the medicine man's house was about a few hours of dirt roads, and it seemed to take forever. I remember the medicine man's house was a traditional Navajo hogan. The old man was quick to come to the door, and he offered us some cookies and soda. Kenny was talking to the medicine man in Navajo, and I didn't understand one word they said to each other. Leland's mother didn't say much, only spoke briefly in Navajo to the medicine man. Leland and I went out to the van and carried in the groceries. The medicine man's face expressed some joy when he picked up the bag of tobacco. We all left back to Leland's house, and we brought the medicine man back to town with us. When we arrived to Leland's house, the medicine man asked us to carry his toolbox. It was a red toolbox, decorated with paintings of Navajo traditional figures and designs. I remember that he took out a feather and started to pray. He went to the side of the house and asked Kenny to dig a hole against the house, right under Tina's bedroom window. Kenny uncovered a buckskin pouch, and the medicine man asked us to stand back while he used his own tools to open the pouch. When he opened the pouch, it contained 2 more pouches. The first pouch he opened had a black and white picture of Tina. It was wrapped with hair, some types of plant, and a powdery substance. The other pouch had a Polaroid picture of Leland's dad, and that looked like it was covered with dry blood and wrapped around a bone and bound together with more hair. This package also covered in a powdery substance. The medicine man took the items and placed them in his toolbox. He said that he would have to take them back to his hogan, and a ceremony would need to be performed to lift the curse. The medicine man had performed a ceremony inside the house to get rid of the evil that plagued the house. I remembered him going into each room of the house and smudging it with sage smoke and sealing the house with cedar ash. When Kenny left with the medicine man, I remember that making plans for the ceremony. Later that week, Leland and his family had to go to town to buy more groceries for the medicine man, buckskin, a Navajo wedding basket, and a metal ammo box. I was puzzled by the ammo box. Why would he need an ammo box? I was so full of questions, and I wanted to know what was going on, and I wanted to be part of the ceremony. I wanted to see what was being done to lift the curse, so I asked if I could go to the ceremony. I asked what the medicine man found, and Leland's mother told me that the items were to curse those people, and it was sent by a witch. They didn't know who sent the curse, and it seemed to affect Tina more and more. Since Tina was becoming more and more withdrawn, she never told us that she was having nightmares and seeing shadows in her room. In her dreams, she would see a native man with long hair, and he would be chanting and laughing at times. She said she felt that she should know who this man was in her dream, but she couldn't identify the man. She was being tormented by this dark figure, and she kept it to herself. She never brought it up because of all the drama that had already happened in that household. And she didn't want to add more problems to what was already going on. She kept all this information to herself, and when the medicine man came in to cleanse her room, she finally told her mother what was going on. A couple of days after the cursed medicine pouches were removed, things seemed to get better at the house. Tina's attacks seemed to have settled down, and things started to get back to normal. In a few days, they were going to have the ceremony to lift the curse, and hopefully things were going back to normal. There were chores that needed to be done before the ceremony, such as cutting and gathering firewood. We had gone into the mountains with Kenny and Leland to gather firewood and brought them back to the medicine man's hogan. Kenny was talking about what the medicine man learned about the evil bundles. He said that they were made by a Navajo witch that practiced skinwalking. The person that planted the bundles had had contact with Tina, and she knows who he is. He had planted those bundles to ruin Tina's life, and that he wanted to make sure she suffered by killing her father. The medicine man had also said that the witch had planted a cursed bone into Tina's father, and he was able to manipulate Tina's father's actions. He also mentioned that this could have been avoided if they would have come to him earlier. The day of the ceremony had arrived, and I remember going to the medicine man's hogan and cleaning up his yard. Leland and Kenny and I were chopping wood and bringing the logs into the hogan. When dusk arrived, the ceremony began. I remember that Tina was brought into the hogan, and she sat on the ground. The medicine man was singing and chanting, while at the same time he was making a large sand painting on the dirt floor of the hogan. Kenny was asked to come into the hogan and assist the medicine man. Only Tina, Tina's mother, Kenny, and the medicine man were allowed into the hogan. I was instructed to start a fire outside in the fire pit and make sure it doesn't go out. I heard drums and more singing coming from the hogan, and Kenny came outside with a shovel. He scooped up some wood, charcoal, and ash, and took it into the hogan. He came out again with the ammo can and placed that in the fire. He said to make sure that the fire doesn't go out. I started to chop more wood because I didn't know how long the ceremony was going to last. I knew that some ceremonies would go through the entire night. The ammo can had turned black, and the paint bubbled off the ammo can. Kenny came back outside and retrieved the ammo can with his shovel and went back into the hogan. Leland and I continued to keep the fire burning, and we were asked to come into the hogan. The medicine man had told Kenny that Leland and I were going to be blindfolded and wait outside for more instructions. They placed blindfolds on us, and I thought, what did I get myself into? Kenny guided us outside and sat us down on a couple of logs. I heard Kenny add more logs to the fire, and he went back inside the hogan. It wasn't much longer when I heard crying from the hogan. Sounded like Tina was crying, and we heard more drumming and singing from the medicine man. The door opened up, and we heard Kenny talking to Leland's mother, that everything was going to be okay. Leland and I were making small talk, mostly because it was strange and I felt a little scared. I told Leland that I was uncomfortable on what was going on and that I wanted to remove the blindfold. Leland told me to keep it on, and there must be a reason why we were blindfolded. Kenny came over, and he said we were to remain silent and to hold the ammo can. We weren't supposed to open the can, nor were we to put it on the ground. Kenny said someone will be here to pick up the can, and we weren't to look at that person. Just hold the can by the bottom and lift it up once it arrives. Kenny said it was important that we don't look at who was picking up the can, and that not to be afraid. Nothing will happen to us as long as we did what we were told. Kenny had given me the ammo can. It felt heavy, and there was something in the can. It moved around, and the weight shifted from one side to the other. I couldn't imagine as to what was inside the can moving around. I told Leland that there was something moving around in the can. Leland asked to hold the can, and I gave it to him. Leland said that he could feel something moving around inside the can. We wondered what was in the can, and that's when we heard Kenny come out of the hogan. He came over and told us to stay quiet and to listen out for whoever was going to take the can. We asked him how we would know who was going to take the can, and he replied that we would know. Kenny reminded us to stay quiet and listen out as he walked back to the hogan. We listened to the medicines man singing, and it seemed to get more and more quiet, as if the singing was fading away. Then we heard the sounds of heavy footprints walking towards us. Leland sat beside me, and I grabbed Leland's arm. I felt him lift the ammo can in the air. The ammo can started to shift its weight around, and I reached up to help stabilize the can from moving around too much. I heard heavy breathing, and I could feel the warm air of whatever's breath was out there. I wanted to remove the blind to see what was out there, but I was afraid of seeing something I might regret. The breathing sounded like a horse breathing heavy, and its breath was hot, like a heater blowing onto your head and shoulders. I could tell this thing was tall and big. That's just how I felt. My heart was racing, and I felt the can move upward, and we let go. The thing had taken the can. I call it a thing because I had that eerie impression that whatever out there wasn't human. We heard it walk away from us, and it got quiet. Then slowly we heard the drumming and singing from the medicine man. We stayed seated with our blindfolds on and waited for next instructions. I asked Leland what he thought, came over, and he said he thought it was a horse. I remember telling him that it wasn't a horse, but something else. Leland said that whatever took the ammo can was cold, like ice cold. I asked him how he knew it was cold, and he said that once it grabbed the can, it brushed against his fingers, and it was icy cold. The drums had finally stopped, and the sun was about to rise from the east. Kenny and the medicine man came out of the hogan, and they said we could remove our blindfolds. We told Kenny what we experienced, and he said that what happened to us was never to be discussed with anyone. He said that a holy being came for the can, and inside the can, the curse manifested into a physical form. The Holy One took the curse back to where it came from. Kenny said that curse was finally lifted, and that things should start to be back to normal. That evening went by very slow, and it seemed to go on forever. When we got back home, Leland's home felt differently. The home felt clean, and it didn't have the negative feeling. I asked Tina about the ceremony, and she said during the ceremony, she'd seen the person that placed the curse. The native guy in high school had placed the curse. He was a Skinwalker, and he was jealous she didn't accept his offer. She said that she was given a cup with liquid, and she drank it. She became dizzy and nauseous. She said that she blacked out and didn't remember most of the night. Tina's mother had said that Tina had vomited in the ammo can, and Kenny had taken the can outside, and they continued the ceremony. They didn't hear anything else that happened outside. They had no idea that we were visited by something, and it had taken the can. They were amazed when we told them what we experienced outside by the fire. So quoth this raven. A huge thank you to Raldo for sharing this with us. I absolutely adore these authentic Skinwalker stories. A big thank you all to coming and listening. I still don't know why you like listening to me, but I sure appreciate your visits. And a special thank you to my Patreon supporters, Charlotte Emerson, Ermin Case, Darren and Jennifer, and Laura. If you like this, please hit the little button to let me know. If you didn't, hit the little button to let me know. Leave a comment. I'm always glad to talk with you, my darlings. I'm open to suggestions and criticisms, critiques. If you have not subscribed, please do so and ring the little bell so you know when to come up and see me. And I will talk to you next time, my darlings. Farewell.